Is it possible to create a 508c1A free church? In today's video, I want to talk about the differences between the 508c1A subcategories and the nuance that's involved in really seeing what are the track record of these entities, how do you even operate under 508c1A, and is this have anything to do with being a church? Because that's one of the most common questions I get asked every single week. So as far as what 508c1A, that subsection says in the IRS code, there's a list of several entities that are mandatory non-filing exemptions under 501c3. So what does that mean? 501c3 is the nonprofit charitable subsection of the IRS code. And so what 508c1A is saying is it's a subsection of that where certain entities are mandatory that they are exempt from filing. So they do not have to file anything in order to prove that status of being tax-exempt nonprofit. So churches are the foundation for this 508c1A subclause, because when you look at the largest churches in America, we know they're not paying taxes. That's just part of what it means to be a church or a religious institution in America, and really most countries around the world. Religious institutions are known to be tax exempt. But the real question is, let's say that you or I, normal common folk, let's say we wanted to open up our own free church under 508c1A. Well, okay, so now we say we're a church, great. Even if we come up with some document, we write up some church incorporation document, and I don't even know how that works, but whatever, let's say we do that and we go down to a bank. They're going to ask, oh, what's your church's EIN number? How is your church doing business in order to open up this bank account? And that's where you're going to run into trouble. Because if you're a free church, how do you have the right EIN number to associate with whatever documentation you're using? You need proof in terms of your ability to operate and do business with other institutions. They're going to ask you for certain documentation to prove the status that you're saying you are. And so that is where the nuance comes into play. Because if we look at the largest churches in this country and how they operate, they're clearly not paying taxes, but in order to get to that point where you're receiving millions of dollars in tax breaks from the IRS, and let's say you're a Kim Kardashian and you're opening up a California community church. At that point, you have to ask the question, are you really free, or are you just making a partnership, a deal with the government, a deal with the IRS? So if you want to be a church in this country and operate as a non-filing church without paying any taxes or doing anything, well, good luck, because you're going to have to go to the government and somehow figure out how to attain that status. Now, when we start looking at 508c1A and some of the other subsections of that category, what they call them, there's associations of churches that are included in that. So some people might call that a religious assembly. And again, same thing. If you're going to use that part of the 508c1A, what kind of paperwork are you using? So fundamentally, when we look at the nuanced way in terms of how we're operating, we're using a trust that operates as an ecclesiastical convention. Because a convention is one of the words that's included in terms of the several terms that are applicable under 508c1A. And especially this templated document that we're using from Liberty Aid Academy, this qualifies as an ecclesiastical convention because there are 3 clauses in particular that mention Jesus Christ, and the main one being that we're just following the common law of Jesus Christ. So English common law, which is what built the Constitution, this dates all the way back to the Bible. That's why we call this trust ecclesiastical, and that's why our government itself is based on ecclesiastical trust documents. So it's just part of how the matrix is constructed. And when we understand that, that the way to truly be free is to operate as a 508c1A, part of this game we're playing is that it's a very rational decision to make to follow in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, to follow the common law. What's actually irrational is when you look at how 99% of Christians virtue signal these religious, beliefs and these different rituals, and that's fine. Everyone can do that in their private life. In my private life, I do believe in Jesus Christ as well on the religious side, but that has nothing to do with strategically how do we operate under the law, under the common law, and how do we at the same time operate legally under the legislation, under the legislative codes of the US government, because we still have to do business in the public realm in the sense that we're operating a trust, we're buying and selling things. Because that's another thing I see people say about private trusts is that they can't have interest-bearing accounts and do all sorts of things, and that's simply not true. Inevitably, if you're using a dollar bill, you're still considered in the public realm because that's a debt note issued by the In God We Trust, by the United States government. So if you're going to even use dollars in a bank account, even if it's not interest-bearing, guess what? You're still kind of wrapping yourself in the public realm at that point. So ultimately, it's about how do we function under the law and under the legislation at the same time, and how do we do that? We do that with a convention. A convention, all that is an agreement, which is defined very clearly under Black's Law Dictionary, and this trust falls under the private right of contract, Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which is a private agreement between the grantor and the trustee to look after a corpus of assets in the trust on behalf of a beneficiary or group of beneficiaries. So, all these misconceptions as far as, is it a church, is it not a church? It's very clearly not a church. It's a convention. And anything to do with churches, such as the IRS 13-point checklist to do with churches or anything else with that, is frankly irrelevant because it comes down to what kind of convention are you using? And then very specifically, not just any agreement, it's what specific document. And when we look at the trust document at Liberty Aid, they just have the longest running public track record of doing that. So if you want to find out more about that document and how private express work and trusts work in general, then you can check the link in the bio and join our free school community. And that's where we have a lot more information about the specifics of, not just the 508c1a, but also how we use that in combination with cash flow and retirement planning as well. So I look forward to seeing many of you in there. And if you have a question, drop it in the comments. Is there still any confusion on, what it means to be a 508c1a and how, as a category, you can't really lump everything in together. You can't, even I see some lawyers and people out there doing this, they're saying, oh, those 508c1as over there. Well, no, it's not a category. You have to be very specific about what documents are you using. How are you operating? If you're claiming you're a church, that's a different story. I don't do anything church-like. All I'm claiming, not even claiming, all I'm expressing very clearly in the documents that I'm using is that I'm operating as an ecclesiastical convention. And just as a common analogy that I give people, one of the most BS groupings that I see in modern day society today is this LBGTQ analogy, where they take this large group of people that encompasses a whole spectrum, as they say, and they're taking very normal, rational people and lumping them in with people who are absolutely insane. And then they're calling it a group and then trying to pass all these, different legislation and even the nomenclature and how we speak about it. We're referring to this group, even though there's so many nuanced individuals and personalities within that group. So in the same way, you can't refer to 508c1a as a category. It has to be nuanced when you're looking at how to express that belief and operate and do business. So I look forward to seeing many of you in the school community, and I'll see you guys in the next one.